Did you know that a country smaller than New York City now manages more private wealth per square kilometer than almost anywhere else on Earth? Singapore, a tiny island of just 734 square kilometers, sitting at the southern tip of the Malay Peninsula, has quietly become one of the most powerful financial centers in the world. As of 2023, the city-state hosts over 1,400 family offices, private firms managing the fortunes of single ultra-wealthy families, a staggering jump from fewer than 100 just a decade ago. That's not an accident. That's a master plan unfolding in real time. What you're about to explore is far more than a story about money. It's a story about strategy, ambition, social tension, and the delicate art of balancing a nation's soul against its economic ambitions. Singapore stands at the center of one of the most fascinating wealth migrations in modern history, and understanding it means understanding the future of global finance. So buckle up, because this story is equal parts inspiring, complex, and deeply human. Building the foundation, Singapore's strategic vision. To understand why billionaires are flooding into Singapore today, you have to go back decades. Since gaining independence in 1965, Singapore's founding leaders made a conscious decision: this small, resource island would survive and thrive by becoming indispensable to the world. With no natural resources to exploit, Singapore invested aggressively in its people, its infrastructure, and its institutions. It built a world-class port, cultivated a highly educated workforce, and established one of the most transparent and corruption-free governments in Asia. By the 1990s, it had already established itself as a major regional financial hub. The legal system was designed with business in mind: predictable, enforceable, and deeply respected internationally. Property rights were sacrosanct, and contracts were honored. Singapore's currency, the Singapore dollar, became one of the most stable in Asia. The government didn't just talk about business friendliness, it embedded it into every layer of governance. These weren't just marketing points. They were the bedrock upon which an entire ecosystem of wealth would eventually be built. The seeds planted decades ago are now bearing extraordinary fruit. The perfect storm. Why billionaires are choosing Singapore now. So what transformed Singapore from a respected financial center into the undisputed magnet for ultra-high net worth individuals? The answer lies in a perfect convergence of global instability and local opportunity. Between geopolitical tensions in China, rising regulatory pressure in Hong Kong, political volatility across Southeast Asia, and economic unpredictability in the West, wealthy families were urgently searching for a stable sanctuary, a place where their assets, and more importantly their families, would be safe. Singapore answered that call louder than anyone else. Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater Associates, the world's largest hedge fund, set up a family office here. So did James Dyson, the British engineering billionaire. The Singapore government didn't simply wait for the wealthy to arrive. It actively rolled out the red carpet. The Global Investor Program offers a pathway to permanent residency for those who invest a minimum of SGD 10 million, roughly 7.5 million United States dollars, into approved funds or businesses. There's no capital gains tax, no inheritance tax. Income tax rates top out at just 22%, well below many Western nations. For someone managing a 9 or 10-figure fortune, these numbers are transformative. Add world-class healthcare, an exceptional education system, and Changi Airport consistently ranked the world's best, connecting Singapore to the entire globe. And the choice becomes almost obvious. The economic ripple. What all this wealth actually does when billions of dollars flow into a small economy, the effects are profound and far-reaching. The wealth management sector in Singapore has exploded, creating tens of thousands of high-paying jobs for lawyers, compliance officers, investment managers, accountants, and financial advisors. The assets under management in Singapore grew from SGD 3.4 trillion in 2017 to over SGD 5 trillion by 2022, representing some of the fastest growth of any financial center in the world. These are not passive pools of money sitting in vaults. They are actively deployed capital, seeking opportunities and fueling growth across the entire region. Family offices in Singapore are increasingly channeling their investments into Southeast Asian startups, sustainable technology, and regional infrastructure. Singapore is quietly becoming the venture capital heartbeat of Asia, not Silicon Valley, not Shenzhen, but this small island at the crossroads of East and West. Fintech unicorns, green energy companies, and biotech firms are receiving funding from family offices that wouldn't have existed here a decade ago. The ripple effects extend from Jakarta to Ho Chi Minh City to Kuala Lumpur. Singapore doesn't just hold wealth, it actively deploys it, making itself an engine for regional economic transformation, the shadow side, rising inequality and social tension. For all its dazzling success, Singapore's wealth surge carries a sharp and uncomfortable shadow. The property market has become almost unrecognizable. Luxury condominiums with panoramic harbor views and private pools are selling for tens of millions of dollars, with some penthouses fetching over SGD 80 million, prices that would have seemed fantastical just a few years ago. But the pain isn't contained to the luxury market. The ripple effect has pushed rents and property prices across all segments to record highs, squeezing middle-class families, young professionals, and first-time homebuyers. The dream of owning a home, long a cornerstone of Singaporean identity, is becoming harder to reach. Beyond housing, the cost of living in general has surged. International school fees, premium dining, car ownership, and even everyday groceries reflect a city calibrated increasingly to the tastes and spending power of the ultra-wealthy. According to ECA International's 2023 report, Singapore ranked as one of the most expensive cities in the world for expatriates, surpassing cities like New York and London. For many ordinary Singaporeans, the disconnect is visceral. Watching headlines about record-breaking property sales while struggling to stretch a salary that hasn't grown at the same pace. The social contract that once promised upward mobility for all is being quietly renegotiated. The government's tightrope walk policy in the age of extreme wealth. Singapore's government finds itself walking one of the most delicate tightropes in modern governance. On one side, the economic logic is undeniable. Foreign wealth creates jobs, stimulates innovation, and fills government coffers with tax revenues that fund public services. On the other side, every policy choice that favors wealth attraction risks accelerating inequality and eroding social cohesion. The government has not been blind to this tension. In 2023, Singapore significantly raised the additional buyer's stamp duty for foreign property purchases to 60%, one of the steepest cooling measures in the world, in a direct attempt to slow the property price spiral and signal that ordinary citizens' housing needs come first. The government has also doubled down on its commitment to public housing through the Housing Development Board (HDB), ensuring that the vast majority of Singaporeans live in subsidized state-built flats. Social support systems, including healthcare subsidies, education grants, and workforce retraining programs, have been strengthened. The critics argue these measures are reactive rather than structural. The fundamental question, whether a city can simultaneously serve as a global wealth hub and a fair meritocratic society, remains open. Singapore is essentially running a live experiment, and the results will have implications far beyond its borders. Singapore's story is our story. The crossroads of globalization, what happens in Singapore doesn't stay in Singapore. This tiny city-state is essentially a mirror held up to the entire world, showing us in concentrated form the possibilities and the costs of welcoming extreme wealth into a community. London faced its own version of this reckoning, with Russian oligarchs and Gulf sovereign wealth. New York grapples with luxury towers that sit mostly empty while housing costs crush working families. Dubai has built an entire brand identity around tax-free wealth attraction, but Singapore does it with a rigor, a transparency, and a strategic intentionality that sets it apart. It is perhaps the most conscious and deliberate participant in this global trend. The true measure of Singapore's success will not be counted in the number of family offices or the trillions of dollars under management. It will be counted in whether a young Singaporean teacher, nurse, or engineer can still afford to raise a family with dignity in the city their grandparents built. That's the ultimate test, and it's a test that every major city in the world is, in one form or another, also taking. Singapore's journey is a living laboratory for the 21st century's most pressing question. Can prosperity be truly shared? We'd love to know what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Mindcrafted for more deep dives into the forces quietly reshaping our world. Your perspective matters, and every comment helps us grow this community of curious minds. Subscribe to Mindcrafted for more stories that matter.